The first thing is the agenda review. If there are no revisions requested, any revisions? Then the agenda is accepted without objection. And the next thing is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the next is the visitor section. Hope we have any visitors wanting to speak at this point.
We have at least one online, but nobody's responded yet.
All right, so I'm just going to read this. The public comment and visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask that you limit your remarks to the time constraints prescribed by the chair, which is 3 minutes, and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the community, including respecting the privacy of the students and the parents. So those attending may type their full name remotely can type their full name in the comment section if they wish to speak. During the meeting, comments may be disabled. So do we have some?
Nope.
Oh, I thought we had some. All right.
Oh, there's some in there, but nobody's said they want to participate.
Okay, we'll wait a minute. For 30 seconds. Okay, it sounds like no one wants to speak right now, so the next item is the consent agenda. If no revisions are requested, the consent agenda is accepted without objection. So, and that's the approval of meeting minutes from September 20th, the media packet, and staff changes. Everyone okay with that? Then the consent agenda is accepted. Next item is reports to the board, and we have the convocation painting presentation.
Isaiah won't be here till about 7.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you can
So-
just do it then.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that when Isaiah gets here. That's right. Student board representative report? Is that you?
Yes, that is me.
Jeez. So you're up.
Well, we have been focusing on short-term goals, long-term goals, and then, is it kind of intermediate term goals?
There would be some immediate things.
Yes, immediate things, short-term and long-term. The one thing that we've been really working on right now is making sure that people at BFA are aware of the existence of the Student Voice Committee. And we are going to be doing listening sessions like last year. The current plan is that we will go into different extracurricular clubs and kind of take over just for one meeting and explain who we are, what our purpose is, and that we want students to interact with the group. And then I don't believe we have a plan for teachers just yet, other than the advisories.
I didn't know that you were trying that, like last year probably.
Yes.
You had talked about, I think, we were trying to work with the teachers and the teachers. at that time.
And then another thing that we've been working on, especially Marie, she's another member of the group. She's been doing a wonderful job coordinating the Wednesday enrichment activities. And then we've also been figuring out how to spend the grant money that we have and the best ways that we can use that.
Is Amelia Wall for those who
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know?
Sorry, didn't introduce myself.
You said you wanted to, so I'll let you go on that one.
Yeah, my name is Amelia Wallace, and I am a junior at BFA.
So, he's joining us tonight.
Thank you. All right, the next item is the spring 22 data student report, and I believe that John is going to take us through that.
Yes, this is a collaborative project between Alexis Soy, the Director of Student Services, and myself. So if you just give me 1 minute, I'll get our presentation up. Okay. There are just a couple points worth talking about at the start before we dive too deeply into any of the data. The first is that this is the first time we're actually coming with all this information collated this way for the board. And that reflects a change at Maple Run and a deepening of our commitment to data-based improvement and action planning across the district and aligning our work between all the schools using as much of the data as we can. So as it is the first time that we're doing this, I ask for your graciousness and also for your questions and feedback as we go. The principals have actually, they all wanted to be here tonight for this because we're proud of the improvement work that we're doing and the alignment that's happening across the district. Although I'll just note, it's not really designed as a question and answer session. We'd like to start with presenting this information that we think will be useful and then hear from you what other questions you have or what other data or information that you'd like from us when we do things like this, so we can come back with more. There is quite a bit. So we're trying to strike the right balance between useful information and data for the sake of data. But I'm sure that there'll be more that people want or maybe would like to drill down in specific areas. So that said, there are some considerations besides that going into it. The data that we have that we're looking at is from 2020, spring of 2022 and spring of 2023. And there are some important things that we should consider when we look at the data. Some of them are quite obvious. We will see the impact of the pandemic in different ways when we look at this data. We also will see the impact of new data collection systems across the district. And we'll continue to see that impact over the next year. And we're just beginning to see the impact of really monumental shifts in curriculum instruction and assessment, particularly in math and in literacy and in the areas related to restorative practices across the district. And I'll also just note, because this is something that gets asked anytime we look at student outcome data, all of our data is actually almost exactly in line with what we're seeing across the state when we look at state averages for data and national averages. That's not actually something that we're proud of. We aspire to be better than those averages, and when you look at this data with us, I think you'll understand why. There are two quick disclosures. One is I have not included data from the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment. That's our state assessment. It was brand new in the spring. Many of you may know that the implementation of that assessment across the state was plagued with technical issues around the administration of it. And indeed here at Maple Run, some of you may know of or even have children that were in classrooms that couldn't log on or were kicked out in the middle of the test. The tech issues really compromised the test, and we're actually seeing the impact of that continue. Today we were just notified that many schools across the state have compromised data sets that are missing some of the scaled score information, and actually that some of the open response and writing prompts were not scored correctly. So we excluded that data from this presentation today for all of those reasons. I can tell you that it does not, and it's not surprising, the general themes from those data is that it doesn't line up with any of the other data that we have. And we always try to triangulate the data that we get, so we look at classroom data, we look at third-party assessments that we've brought in because they're reliable and valid assessments, and then we look at previous state assessments, things like the SAT or the ACT even are good calibration points, and those almost always line up for us to tell us a story that makes sense. The assessment from the state from last spring is the outlier in that. So that's why I don't have a chart for that. The other is that we've been talking about literacy a lot as a district, and 7 Days just released a really interesting report today on why kids in Vermont are struggling to read. It's kind of a survey of reading instruction and the history of Vermont's declining literacy scores. So it's a good read if you have a little bit of time this afternoon or after the meeting. So with that, we'll dive right into literacy. One thing to know when we're talking about literacy, last year we made the switch, or we began to make the switch to a new instructional program in grades pre-K through 8. That's the Amplify program. And we began changing away from assessment programs that were proven to not be reliable or valid measures of students' reading ability to programs that are. And in that transition, we have some like interesting data trends that have come out. And so they don't always translate directly from one assessment to the other, so we've had to do a little bit of background work for that to translate into a metric that can be compared, which is the rough percentage of students who are reading on grade level. So that's what this data is that we're presenting right here. I will also point out that the change is not actually a percent change, that is the increase in percentage points or the decrease in percentage points. So to use Fairfield as an example, that their score in the spring of 2023 was 9 points higher than it was the previous year, not a 9%. In math, I forgot to say one thing, which is that we did see very promising data that came out of our pilots of the Amplify program in classrooms that were fully implementing it last year. And so that's a very promising thing for us as we have full implementation across all our classrooms this year. In math, similarly, we have seen a lot of progress in classrooms that have implemented the changes to our instruction program by incorporating math menu as a strategy. And we've seen a general increase in scores across different grade levels. In both of these, the literacy and the math data sets, it's important to note that there is a huge pocket of students hovering on either one side, just barely, of that on grade level percentage. And it is, in all of these assessments, you can be considered on grade level, even if you are a year behind. So if you're within a year of grade level, you're considered on grade level. That's a frustrating thing, I think, when we explain it that way, but it is a frustration that teachers know all too well. Many of the best assessment tools are still not precise enough to roll out to a general rating of on grade level reading. They're much better at picking out individual skills that students are mastering. When we look at attendance, there's no surprise here. We saw rapid improvement across the district. I say no surprise because it was a focus for us as a district last year, but also because of the change in the way that schools had to operate during the pandemic. There were much fewer restrictions on students that had exposures. There were shortening of time periods for students that were sick, and we had more and more kids in our classrooms as families felt safer to send kids back to school. We did see, as more and more kids came back to our classrooms, a dip in our behavior. And so I should say, both of these statistics or these data tables are the percentage of students on track to meet the expectations we have for attendance or for behavior. So for attendance, it's the percentage of students who are going to hit that magic number of this data set, which is 95% attendance for the school year. And for behavior, we're looking at the percentage of students with fewer than 9 behavioral instances. 7 behavioral instances over the course of the year. And so Bill has presented on this before, but I can't present a snapshot of where we are data-wise without connecting back to the targets that the schools have set. So you can see these are targets that we've set for improvement for this year. The district data from spring of 23 is at the bottom just for calibration, and then everything up there would be a target we have for spring of 2024. This was a really hard exercise for members of the leadership team to go through. We had lots of really vigorous conversation about what's a reasonable target to set. because we want to challenge and push ourselves and challenge and push our teachers, but we also need to set goals that are reasonably attainable given what we know about students and where kids are coming from right now. I will say, I know I speak on behalf of the whole leadership team, it is a little bit of a bitter pill. It is a bitter pill for us to have stated goals that in some cases have less than 50% of our students on grade level. That said, were we to hit all of these targets, that would actually, in the world of education, be considered rapid and tremendous growth compared to where we've been historically and where we're coming from in spring of 2022. So there are a couple key takeaways that I just wanted to point out. We are in the early days of major systems change, and we're seeing early indications that these are actually the right changes that we've identified and made. We, of course, made these changes based off of research and evidence-based practices, but we're monitoring our own data to make sure that they're working for us. We do also see the need to continue to increase our Tier 1 capacity, which is what we see in the classroom. So Tier 1 is the general, universally accessible classroom experience or school experience for students. And we have a lot of kids that we still need to find ways to serve at that level. And when we have the number of students who are off of grade level in reading or math or in any area that we do or that the state does, it is not possible to utilize the traditional approach, which is to refer students to someone like a specialist or an interventionist. We simply don't have enough of those people in education today or in our school system to intervention ourselves out of a dilemma like this. I will also say, and we've been saying, that we have all of these data points that are school-based, but this is all taking place within a greater and very complicated social context in terms of what kids are exposed to out in the community, what supports kids have outside of school, and it's important for us to continue our efforts to partner with the community and expand them as we've been trying to do. And we also need to be mindful of teacher capacity. I can speak firsthand. I've been in very many literacy classrooms for the start of the school year with teachers who are working very hard and diligently to implement the new program that we have for this year. I had a very experienced teacher tell me yesterday that despite having a master's degree and being at the end of her career and considered one of the more experienced teachers in her building, she felt like a first-year teacher this year, making a shift of this magnitude, and sharing her challenges of the additional time really required in the evenings that she's spending getting ready for the next day so she can implement these changes. So I think it's important really to call out the incredible work that classroom teachers and specialists are doing across the district to make these changes in for educational systems, what is really a record-breaking pace. And I will also say, sadly, we have populations of students who continue to fall further behind. We have pockets of students who went into the pandemic further behind than their peers. Many of these students come from our historically marginalized populations and continue to fall further behind even as we've returned to full-time schooling and made changes like this. So this is an area of focus and inquiry for the teams that are doing this work. I know we've talked about these before, but these are the objectives and key results. I've summarized them, so they're not the word-for-word versions because I wanted them on one slide, but I did just want to call attention to the fact that all of this data that I've just shared with you actually really strongly supports this work that's been identified by the various committees across the district and the leadership team, and that these key actions are the correct ones for us to move forward. So that was a lot of me talking and throwing a lot of numbers up there. I'm happy to open up for conversation or feedback or questions.
So in terms of the attendance, so like Fairfield Center School, 59%, spring 20, what exactly does that mean? 59% of the students had less than certain number?
This is, so spring 2023 at Fairfield, 59% of students met the requirement, which is present 95% or more of students.
Okay.
And you can see spring 2020, that was only 20%.
When you measure whether kids are on grade level or not, you also look at how many kids are above grade level or at the beginning of the year or really performing as kids would perform at the end of the second semester, perhaps.
Absolutely. So basically, students, depending on the assessment that we're utilizing, are generally categorized into 3 or 4 categories. One of those is generally above the benchmark or exceeding the benchmark. And actually, just as with the data that we get about students who are not meeting benchmarks or are below grade level, that data about students who are already exceeding it is just as valuable because teachers need to make adjustments and accommodations for those students as well. It doesn't make sense for them to learn something that they're already mastered.
And being the youngest person here, I'm sorry to try to say, the specific numbers, but enjoy your interpretation, Thanks.
Could you just give like a broad overview of what the Amplify program is and like what the big changes are?
Sure. I will. My boss will give me a signal when I talk too much on this one.
Or maybe one of our colleagues.
Yeah.
You hit a love of his.
Yes. So the world of literacy instruction is varied in terms of beliefs and approaches. And there's a great podcast, if you're into podcasts, called Told the Story that I recommend. It's by American Public Media. It's short, very compelling listen. And part of that story is also captured in the 7 Days article that came out today. For a long time, there were 2 competing camps when it came to literacy instruction, whole language, which was really more about engagement and kids learning how to read naturally. And I'm doing like the 30,000 foot view of it. And what used to be called phonics and then later evolved into the science of reading, which was really based off of neuroscience and how to connect the different language centers of the brain so that students can do basic foundational reading skills before they have to do more complex ones. It was highly politicized, with phonics generally viewed as associated with Republican-leaning states' efforts to improve literacy, and with whole language very much associated with Democratic-leaning states' efforts to improve literacy, and you can see that by looking at different presidencies as well and the policies they champion. And unfortunately, for the state of Vermont, basically everybody in the state went all in on whole language, which later merged into a form of balanced literacy, or what was called balanced literacy. And so many schools in Vermont utilize programs like Lucy Hawkins' Read or Write Workshop, or the variety of Fontes and Pinnell products that were peddled. They were all associated with prestigious universities, had research that was compelling, and after too long a period of time, it turned out there was lots of bogus research that was there, and there were lots of things that were just plain made up. And you can actually plot, looking at the state of Vermont, when the major whole-scale adoption of these programs started, and this is true for Maple Run as well, and the beginning of our decline in literacy scores. And you can see that over more than a decade. So that's the that's it in a nutshell. I will say neither strategy is perfect, actually. And one of the reasons that we selected Amplify as our literacy program is because it is based firmly on the science of reading, but it takes some of the best engagement strategies that came out of the whole language and the balanced literacy movements about how to get kids excited about reading and learning to read, and incorporated the science of reading into that. Amplify is also a great partner for us. They're affiliated with DIBELS, which is generally the most respected and kind of gold medal literacy assessment that we have in our country. And so the fact that DIBELS has partnered with them and that they've been able to tie the program directly to DIBELS, it gives teachers highly accurate information about what kids can and can't do and what teachers might think about doing to support them.
Thank you.
And I could go forever. So.
I'm sure everybody else has heard it a few times. Questions?
All right then.
My turn.
Yeah.
Your turn.
All right.
Great. So I know that John already did it for me in the beginning, but with such a new board, I do think it's appropriate just to introduce myself. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Alexis White, and I am the Student Support Director for the school district. So nice to see and meet all of the new faces in the room. So John already pointed out that obviously we collect academic attendance and behavior data, but what we also know is that when we look at that information and that data in a silo, we're really only getting one small picture of the student. We're not really getting kind of the whole child picture. So we, as a leadership team, we think it's important to also administer surveys that particularly focus on social emotional learning. That really kind of gives an additional context and information around, okay, we see attendance records and academic scores, but how are they feeling and how are they doing socially and emotionally, and how are they feeling about school climate within their buildings. So that's kind of an added layer of data that we collect. This is all done through Panorama. So another important point of clarification is that's really our data warehouse where everything is entered and stored, and it is heavily researched and all evidence-based. So when we talk about the surveys, we are not creating the survey questions on our own. We are taking them and pulling them from the Panorama manuals because all those questions have been vetted and backed by extensive research. So it's not a perfect system by any means. We're still working out a lot of flaws, but it is one of the more evidence-based data platforms recommended for public schools. So the first slide, I'm presenting this a little differently. So John presented spring of 2022 to spring of 2023. And these slides capture fall of 2022 to spring of 2023. So they're really showing the difference between our results at the start of the school year last year to the end of the school year. I do have spring 2022 data that I will share with this team. Full disclosure, I realized I probably should add that to the slide after Aaron already submitted the board packet. So that is on me. I will own that, but I have it to tell you. So these are just our response rates. Again, the surveys are only administered to grades 3 and up. So we do not survey pre-K, kindergarten, or grades 1st and 2nd. And again, that is a recommendation from Panorama. And you can just see the changes and the difference in response rates as a district as a whole, and then for each individual building. If you want to go to the next slide. So we intentionally, as a leadership team, for last school year, we agreed on targeting 3 specific social emotional learning areas. We wanted to target safety, belonging, and a sense of well-being. So all of the questions that we agreed upon fall into one of those 3 categories. If if you look at school safety in particular, the questions that were asked, that's what's on the right-hand side, so you can see exactly what the students saw and what the students were responsible for answering. And then you can see the favorable response rate. So in Panorama, how they have, they're all multiple choice, and the answers that the students get to choose from are, an example would be strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, more neutral or unsure, and then agree and strongly agree. There's some form of variation of that answer depending on how the question is worded. And what we code as a favorable response is if they either answer agree or strongly agree. So that is what is coded as a favorable response. The middle question is more of a neutral response, and then obviously if they respond with disagree or strongly disagree, that's coded as an unfavorable response rate. So those are again the differences between the district and each individual building. For spring, if you were to compare spring of 2022 to spring of 2023 for safety, there's actually a 6% increase for the district as a whole. So we went from an 80% favorable response rate as a district to an 86% response rate. Again, if you're comparing spring of 2022 to spring of 2023. If you move on to a sense of belonging, there's many more questions that were asked within this domain. Again, the chart shows the change both across the district and at each individual school. Again, if you were to compare spring of 2022 to spring of 2023, there's an 8% increase when you look at the district as a whole. So we went from a 73% response rate in spring of 2022 to an 81% response rate in spring of 2023. And then the last category is well-being. So again, many more questions in this domain. We did not answer any questions that were technically considered a part of the well-being domain in spring of 2022, so I do not have that comparison point for you because it doesn't exist. But you can see the changes, again, across the buildings and across the district as a whole. This is the one category, if you compare it to the other two, we have the most positive increases in percentage change. So what we did with this is we reviewed it collectively as a leadership team. Again, we dive into the district level data, but we also have school teams break out and do their own deep dive into their own data points. And some of the common reflections that came out across all of the buildings are, this is kind of really telling us from our own leadership perspective, that increases in maladaptive behavior in very small isolated incidents. So maybe there's a big escalation or a big incident with one or two students that has a huge impact on a very large group of students, whether that's the entire classroom, the entire learning community, or maybe the entire hallway that witnessed or observed some really big behaviors from a small number of students. There might be slight decreases in a sense of safety, while at the same time increases in a sense of well-being. And just transparency, there was conversations and reflections when talking about a sense of safety. Is that potentially, or could that be a result around our change in SROs? That created a lot of, obviously, emotion. So there's a wonder if there's any correlation between the role of the SRO and students' perceptions of feeling safe at school. And then a wonder is how does John kind of pointed at this earlier as well, but how does the data potentially reflect or represent challenges that are bigger than just the school community? So the challenges that we're seeing within homes, within family systems, and within the community at large. And school teams are constantly collaborating with one another and brainstorming how do we continue to tighten or enhance our collaborative relationships with our community partners. because we know we can't do it alone, and we need help from other organizations and agencies within our community to help address some of the school issues and challenges that we're facing. The other question that we kind of explored, again, as a leadership team, is what are some action steps that we can take kind of now and in the more immediate term. Some really great ideas came out of other leadership team members around making behavior and SEL data more routine on data teams or our multi-tiered systems of support meetings that we have weekly, and making that more a part of our process. So we're staying on top of it, meeting with the school student council to really enhance and increase student voice, and really saying, like, what's your reaction to these survey results? These are student survey results, so does that align with what you're seeing amongst your peer groups or not? And what are we missing in terms of our surveys? And there's been a ton of behavior matrix work across all of the buildings. We really started off this year, from my perspective, in probably the best place that we have in many, many years, around really being aligned and clear and consistent around what our response is going to be to behaviors, and who are those people that are going to be responsible on the front lines to intervene and address those behaviors depending on the nature and the severity of the behavior that we're seeing. So those were just some of the key takeaways that were, again, were pretty common across all of the schools. And we are, before I open it up for questions, we are doing another survey this year. We're actually rolling it out this week. So we do this every year, but we'll have more results to bring back to you with the fall of 2023. We are doing the survey a little bit differently this year, where we are more intentionally targeting social emotional learning competency areas. So beyond just well-being and safety, we're looking at self-management, we're looking at self-regulation from the student's perspective. And the beautiful thing about that, again, John alluded to this a little bit earlier, when we measure competency areas, we will then be able to compare them to national benchmarks within Panorama, which we cannot do in these categories. So we will be able to see where we fall nationwide in terms of our students' ability to self-manage, self-regulate, make responsible decisions, and so forth.
And that's from their standpoint.
As the student's perspective, yes. Yep.
These are anonymous surveys, I assume.
They're not anonymous surveys. So, and that is intentional, because with our new kind of tightening up our multi-tiered systems of support, if a student responds and says, for example, I really feel unsafe in my classroom, or I have felt like I have had thoughts of self-harm, we want to intervene. We don't want that to be a vague general data point out there. We want to be able to go into Panorama and say, like, okay, somebody's got to check in with Jimmy, and who is the best person to do that, to see if we need to wrap them a little bit tighter with supports and services. Which is why in the beginning, the survey is an additional tool, because we might not catch those situations by just looking at literacy or math or attendance data. We want an additional data point to be able to really assess the well-being of students. So in Panorama, if you could see it, they really have 4 columns. They have behavior, academic, attendance, and SEL. And this is where the SEL pieces would pop up. And we can see, right, okay, these students are in the red. We need to dive a little deeper into that. Great question.
I have a question. This is Nilda.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
Can I go?
You can go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that report. My question is, are we deeming those small percentages, or is Panorama deeming them as just statistically significant? Because they seem very, very small, along with even the responses. So I'm just wondering. do they have some wild calculus formula that proves that they are statistically significant and therefore don't question it, or what?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and thank you for asking that question specifically. So they are not statistically significant differences. They are very, very small. And depending on the actual school, what the change shows is on average, it equates to about 7 to 13 students, depending on what school you're looking at. So that's a really great question.
What would be considered clinically significant?
I honestly, I could get that answer for you, but I don't have that off the top of my head. And what Nova's question kind of made me think of another important point. What Panorama also does include is what they call a playbook. And it gives actual resources and tangible interventions and strategies that teachers can use in the classroom in response to what the data is telling us. And I have heard from many of my colleagues, many who are in the room tonight, that they have looked at the playbook themselves and have actually heard from teachers directly how helpful it is. So sometimes, you see those tools and strategies and they're not super applicable or really relevant, and the feedback that we're hearing from other admin and staff is they're very beneficial and useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Just got a question in terms of how we break this data out. Do we have any sort of demographic data to that? If we wanted to and had the resources, we'd be able to use some demographic data that we could drill down on, like specifically like socioeconomic status, things like that.
Yes, yep, so you can sorry, I don't know if that's a question, I don't want to overstep.
It's for both of us, I think, yeah.
Sorry. I'll try and then you
Oh,
can
yeah.
fix whatever I mess up. So yes, great question. You can disaggregate the data, and that is easy to do if you want that information. And some of the key categories that we have looked at, again, as a leadership team, is we look at free and reduced lunch, so that gets at really the socioeconomic status piece. You can see students on an IEP versus a 504 versus not on a plan at all. You can look at race and ethnicity, and I think those are really the key areas.
Gender.
Gender, thank you. Yes, and that's another category that we. And again, this is all, at least from the survey perspective, it's all how students self-identify and choose the information that they choose to put into the survey tool.
We can do all the same.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can do that same breakdown for any of the academic attendance or behavior data as well.
Yeah, when we, in terms of like, things that we'd like to see, I'd be interested in seeing a demographic breakdown in those categories.
Okay.
I've got a question. In looking at how students perceive things with the pandemic and doing a lot of virtual learning, and then the kids coming back to a more classroom setting, are you seeing any increase in how they feel about that, or are you seeing behaviors sort of amplified, negative behaviors, because they're not used to being back in the classroom interacting, and they have to kind of relearn, group behavior and that kind of thing? Are you seeing the results of the pandemic on, student attitude and well-being, their sense of well-being and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to speak for the group, but I would say yes to all of that. So we see pockets of it all. We see students students who are thriving being back with their peers and not having the remote learning. We see students who were, for a lot of different reasons, being back in the building full-time is much safer and a much better learning environment than virtual, but they're struggling. They're struggling learning the social expectations, the routines, the academic demands. And then we do have students who did better virtually and were thriving with remote options, and bringing them back in is difficult. And they would prefer to go back to how it was during COVID if they could. So we're seeing all of that. It can be very difficult to determine the why around behavior. So it could be they're carrying in stuff again from home. It could be the academic content is too challenging. It could be the social expectations. That's what's tricky about the work. It's really hard to pinpoint, and it could be all of that for a student or a group of students. Which is why the interventions that need to be put in place could be all over the map. They could need academic intervention. They could also need a whole lot of in-home support that we cannot and do not provide, along with, behavioral programming. Would you?
Yes, agreed.
So a lot of heads are doing this.
Sorry.
They're all like, yeah, she's got it.
They live and breathe it. I do not. I get to walk out of the building, and they're in it, so they're the experts.
Any other questions? Comments? How are you then?
I would ask you one thing. Our colleagues have been working a long day, and if the board was so inclined, I'd say, go home and get some rest.
You can go home.
We did just talk about well-being.
Oh, I thought they wanted to stay for the superintendent's report.
That I know. That I know.
Thank you very much.
See you later. Thank you.
See ya.
Do you want me to get it?
Bring it tomorrow.
Alrighty, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the governance standard self-evaluation that I think everyone did. And, like, electronically? No? Okay.
Well, I'll admit, I started it, but then a lot of the questions, I'm like, I haven't really been here long enough
So-
to know if this has been presented. Or,
You know what, so I'm just gonna jump in and say, I think I would love to sit down and talk about this and kind of figure out a plan where to go. When I first did this last spring, at the superintendent and chairs meeting, and when I redid it just now, my answers were a lot different. And looking at this and thinking, we have, 6 of the 10 people on the board are new since since January, March, or even, since March. It would be hard. I can understand how this would be hard, especially for maybe David. But I think I don't know, what do people want to do with this? I would love to sit down and maybe discuss it at the next meeting or a meeting to figure out kind of where we want to go with this. What do we want to focus on? Do we have a way to?
I have just a quick question. I might have missed this. Do we have an attachment for this? I don't see one in my package.
Did you say objective?
Attachment.
An attachment.
This is
Do we have attachment 7A?
So what we were going to do, Charlie, was project the data live because we knew people were filling it out for the survey. But
Okay.
I think Susan's got some questions before if we do that or not, or if it's better to.
Do we have the data with us?
We can present it.
Okay. Yeah, so let's share that data and then kind of decide what we're going to do with this.
While he's doing that, I'll make a comment, Susan, that I felt the same way you did. I felt doing that survey in the past, I felt more confident this time. And that's because we have done some things.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think before they were anticipated, but not done yet,
Right.
completed,
Yeah,
or, yeah.
And even when we look at, there were some about goals, board goals. I mean, we have them, but we haven't come up with a plan yet. But it's a lot farther along than we were last March.
And I personally have trouble with agree versus strongly agree. Like if I agree with something, I agree with it. I mean, I don't weakly agree or strongly agree, I just agree. But that's my own thing with the Likert scale.
So I can't read that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, there we go. That is,
Oh, okay.
that's as big as it gets, though.
And if you go, so some of the students responded that I know Leah and Jacoby have, because they've been at board meetings, and I think Mara has as well. So that's why you see the number up to 13.
Okay, good,
Yeah, and I responded as well.
good. So is there one of these for every single question? Or is that
There are,
Yeah.
there is.
every single question?
Every separate question. So what we could do, there's a couple options here, Susan, I think you could think about. We could quickly go through it and just quickly glance and see if the color tells us. But I would assume some of the members might want to sit and really kind of look at it and say, which 3 stand out for us?
Yeah. I guess that's what I would like. I'd like, for me, I'd do better paper copy and then really kind of look at it and then come back and figure out, again, which 3 stand out. And
Maybe which 3 are stand out for the good, which 3 are ones we need to look
yeah,
at. So what if we, by Friday, publish this to everybody?
okay,
And then at the next meeting, have that conversation?
okay, perfect. Yeah, because I think,
It's really a print to a PDF.
Yeah.
There's not much. It can be done pretty quick.
had you done this before?
Yes,
So I had never done this before.
I had done this before in a different setting.
Okay, yeah. So Nilda, have you seen this before?
In my life, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so if we could get this sent out by Friday and come back to the next board meeting and just discuss it, come up with, do a round robin of what stands out to us and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can't do it tonight. I mean, there is not enough time in the day to review all those things right now, but I mean, it would be good to pick up on what the common themes are and maybe, figure out where we need to put the biggest, where we'll get the biggest bang for our buck, I guess.
And I think this will correlate with some of the board goals.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's going to be sent to us, Susan. All right, so the next item is the plan for meeting board goals. So again, we adopted the goals last week, which I have right here in front of me. I think I took them out last night.
So you had them last night.
Yeah, I took them out from discussion with somebody.
Oh.
So I thought I put them back in, but
Can you just project the board goals real quick? Go to the board website and put it up there.
You got it.
It helps Susan out that.
she needs lots of help.
They're all over the website, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, well, that's what we're about to do.
Oh, perfect. I've got them right here.
Those are the district.
District goals and then
Yeah.
I've got them, I think right
I
here.
think you, yeah, but there you go.
All right, I've got them. I knew they were there somewhere.
I knew the newest board member would have them already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to come up with a plan for meeting these board goals. And I think that this will entail work sessions. So, I was just thinking about this earlier. I don't know if we want to have a couple of subgroups that address these 3 goals separately, or if we just want to kind of come together and look at the goal statement, make a plan, and then kind of work our way through that way. What do people think?
I favor work group.
Work groups, okay.
That's my opinion.
Different work groups or like one work group that's gonna work our way through?
Well, I think we'd have to have like a 6-hour meeting if we're gonna do one work group and try to work through it, you know?
So
I think we have to do a little bit of a chunk at a time or divide and conquer a little bit.
yeah,
That's my opinion.
no, I agree with you. A chunk at a time or divide and conquer. So the question is, which do people prefer?
I agree with Nilda and you. I think we should break it up.
Um,
The
So,
goals, I think that we should all as a board work on the goal,
okay,
one chunk at
Okay.
a time together. Especially since we're so many new people.
yeah. All right. So what if we, Nilda, I don't know what you think, but I was thinking that maybe Erin can set out one of those polls on where we could get together for a work meeting?
Sure, but don't we have to sort of divide up in teams or
Well,
groups or something?
what Susie was just saying was that she thinks because there's so many, and I agree, there's so many new board members, maybe, we get together and work together on the first goal, come up with a plan for that, get together, work on the second goal, come up with a plan for that, and then get together and work for the third goal, and come up with a plan for that. I think that's what you were saying.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Can I add one
I
modification?
didn't hear all that. I didn't hear that as quite as clearly as you said. Thank you.
I would suggest you actually do the second goal, which is about implement a plan for monitoring. Because last time I gave you, or a couple meetings ago, I gave you a board calendar that looks like this, and Erin just put it in the packet, so it's not something you had before, literally a few minutes ago.
So do this one first.
Because I've calendared out when we can give you data, like you saw tonight, because it's based on our assessment plan. So I think quick wins are always a good thing when doing work, and that way you'll be able to get one goal established pretty quickly and give some feedback. Not that you have to, this gives you more of the calendar, but you might say, hey, these are some of the other things we want to have.
Okay.
And that might be an easier one to get one done and have some success at the beginning.
We can do that. That makes sense. What do other people think?
And I know, people are meeting to death if they're on different groups, like some
Yeah.
of us are, as well as being on a school board. And maybe we could take small chunks, either one goal or 2 goals, and actually spend some time at each board meeting and just devote a half hour, we're gonna work on the goal.
Yeah, we're already here.
We're already here, and,
You know you're gonna be here, you know you're gonna be here.
I mean, that's just an idea, throwing out the idea.
I'm fine with that. I'm meeting now. So we have another board meeting on the 18th.
Yeah.
Could,
You and I set the agenda, so.
yeah, Nilda, I don't know, Nilda and Carly and Charlie, I don't know if you got all that?
Again,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm totally flexible, whatever works. I mean, we need people to be able to attend, so we don't want to create something that people won't come to, so.
So we'll set it for the next
Let's
meeting.
do the next meeting, we'll do the monitoring goal.
Yep,
You have you have this piece, it's in the packet right now, you may have gotten it. I know you had it before, it was colored. I color coded this one and I made it orange because yellow gives you what's happening during the school year, and the orange piece was showing tonight, which was really a data reflection of last school year. That's what you're going to report on, and unfortunately, it's just the timing, the way the assessments work in our school calendar. But I'd love to hear if you say, hey, is there a different way of thinking about this? Because I'm stuck in my educational world and may not have thought of something different or better way of giving data back to the board.
okay. All right, so next board meeting, we're gonna be talking about goal number 2. All right, so the next item is the driver's education side letter. And so the administration, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve the FY24 driver's education side letter. Do I have a second for that? Okay. Now discussion.
Can I just introduce that? We had this last year.
Yep.
Lieutenant Talley from the police department, when he's not working as a police officer, because we have not been able to hire a full-time driver's ed teacher, has been able to get a certification. But this is a way we've been able to work with the association that he can do that, can help with both the classroom and the driving part of driver's ed. And then we're recognizing that it should be a full-time position within the association, but there's some of those restrictions.
So it says here, the stipend amount will be determined by the board of directors under the positions.
We already have that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions about that? All right, so I'm gonna call for the vote. Nilda?
She's having some technical difficulties.
Okay. Carly?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Susan is a yes. Suzanne?
Yes.
All right, and
No one's-
Nilda?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. New business. And this regards the FY24 early retirement requests, and the administration is looking for a motion to approve the FY24 early retirement requests for the list of names, which is in here, in the amounts presented. So I'm going to make that motion that we approve the FY24 early retirement requests. If someone could second that.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Do you need, I'm wondering if we should just do a little context setting for
Yeah.
those who haven't been through this before.
So can you do that for me?
I was actually going to ask Becky if she was in that
That's
place. I
perfect.
didn't get a chance to talk to Becky since 9 this morning. And
Okay.
I'm kind of springing this on her, so I want her to bounce it right back to me if she thinks she should.
Let's bounce it back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have worked several years with the association on early retirement option, and it's up to 8 people. There have been times the board's expended that when it's had that. There are 7 here, and it's, I'm pretty sure it's 7.
6?
6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, thank you, sorry. Counting. There are 6 here presented, so we have agreed that we can fund up to 8, but it was left at the pleasure of the board whether they wanted to do that. The board wants to do that each year. So this is, teachers have to notify us by October 1st that they intend to retire at the end of this year. You see the benefit of that.
Okay,
I don't know
so
if there's questions or concerns or more I should add or.
does anyone have any questions about this?
I was just wondering what that benefit number meant.
So it's 3-year, right? So,
The $12,000
Yeah.
where that came from.
yeah.
It's a figure we came up with a few years back, which is the difference between a retiring teacher and a new hire. A new hire. So it's basically the savings that we would generate.
So they get that amount.
Yes,
Yeah,
the employee
okay.
gets that amount, yes.
Yeah.
And it's based on a 20-year, they've been here for 20 years. If they've been here slightly less than that, it gets prorated down, and that's why you see some with a smaller amount.
And this is pretty typical in most agreements across the state.
Is it just like a one-time amount? they get?
One-time payment.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one-time payment.
And next year, kind of the same, last year, the same thing happened, so it's anyone that gets, well, not anyone that gets their name in before October 1st, but the deadline's October 1st.
Yeah, when we've had over, sometimes the board's funded all of them, sometimes we've drawn in the hat to get to 8. I think this board's been pretty supportive of
Yeah.
it.
So these people are early, they're not actually at retirement.
They would retire at the end of the school year.
Oh, okay.
And some of them probably are they all retirement age? You know, for state retirement, state teachers?
I don't know.
We don't know
I
that.
I don't know that. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we're gonna,
So, I just have a quick question. These requirements, are they, basically they, creating vacant positions, or are they, is there someone to fill the position after they're retired?
We don't know right now, Charlie, because this would be the end of next school year, and we usually don't get into hiring until March. This is at the end of the school year. So it's not like they're retiring tomorrow. This is a notification to the end of the year.
Okay.
Any other questions? Alrighty, so I'm going to call for a vote. So Nilda? Yeah, that's a yes. Charlie?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Susan is a yes, and Susie?
Yes.
All right, so that also goes through. So I'm gonna jump back because I think we have a visitor here.
Yeah.
So this is Isaiah Ludlow. Did I say your name properly?
Perfect.
I'm Susan. I'm not an OT, I mean, I am, but anyways. And you're gonna explain more about this, yeah.
Okay. This year, as you know, every year at Convocation we have students involved. And they've done a performance for many years. And I will say that I took this idea from a couple of places that I've been at. And actually John was with me when we saw this spring at a conference we were together. There was an artist there trying to capture the mood of the conference and what was being talked about. We were talking about equity at that one. And so I went to Dee Christie, who unfortunately will be retiring at the end of the year. He's had an illustrious career with us. And said, Dee, you have a student that might be able to capture the spirit of what happens in Convocation each year in a piece of art. And I literally let, and she said, well, what do you want? And I said, that's my question. I'm not trying to get any more specific than that. She said, yes, I do. I have a gentleman that's very accomplished senior. And so, Isaiah, I think you told me last week you were done with this.
Yeah, I think it was last week or the before.
Yes. So you spent the 4 hours during Convocation up at Collins Burley, and we actually asked him to capture what he saw. And so that's underneath the veil, and we were trying to think of Dee and I talked about it, and we thought the board would be a great place to unveil this. It would be something that would be hanging. We'll probably start here, but have a tour around, and I've had the idea, but I haven't had a chance to ask any of our woodworkers that are here as students to see if they might do a frame for it or not. That's the dream that I have for it, so hopefully we can make that happen. But Isaiah, as we talked the other day, I said there's a couple questions I was going to ask you just so you can kind of give it, what was the experience like to create a painting live as things were happening?
Honestly, it's terrifying.
Yeah, that's a good.
No, that's fine. There's a lot of people at the meeting, so yeah, being in front of everyone was scary, but
yeah,
it was fun. Definitely a good experience, especially moving forward as I look at art school and stuff.
Yeah, he was sitting right off stage on a little platform being able to capture the whole morning. So why don't we unveil it, then we can ask a couple of questions of what, do you want to do it? Would you like to do that? Would you like it? John, maybe you can?
Sure.
Yeah?
Let's do it together. Come on. All right, here we go.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice.
Can you tell us a little bit about your...
Just want to make sure the camera can get it too, so.
So Isaiah, do you want to talk a little bit about your art here and what you were using as a medium and all that?
It's acrylic paint on canvas, all from Miss Christie's room. That's kind of the only medium I use. It wasn't like mixed or anything. Yeah.
What were you trying to capture?
Mostly like the atmosphere there, right? Like the crowd, the colors, movement, like.
Yeah. What do you hope it's communicating to folks?
I hope it's communicating like I don't know, the atmosphere of the event really. It was pretty crazy event.
That's what we tried. That's actually my goal, is to have it a little crazy.
Yeah. So I guess that would be it.
We work with our association, and so I'll bring Mike a little bit into this, but we were red for education that day, so that's why you see a lot of red.
Yep, a lot of red there.
Yeah. So I really want to thank you. It's a gorgeous piece of art. And it's going to be an honor to have it here in this room, but also get it out to schools and have it tour around.
Yeah, thank you.
And I really want to thank you for your efforts. Is there anything else you'd like to say? No.
I don't think so.
All right. Thanks for coming by. I will let you all know Isaiah was running from work to here, so I really thank you for doing this because he was pressed for time. So thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah.
Thank you.
I have a question, can you flash in front of the camera a little bit?
Yeah. Maybe you can zoom in.
Oh, wow. Very nice, thank you.
So he was off,
You
not
actually.
skiers left, but if you're looking at it, he was off to the left.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah, he was right in that corner because we had the whole tech crew was on the other side for the
Yeah.
speakers and the sound lights for the student performance and for Capture Me. And then I think I drive people nuts because I run around the whole Collins Road. So.
I think you got my picture just perfect.
Yeah, you were there. At one point I come down the aisle, Jack's right on the aisle, like, oh, hey, you're here.
It's more the microphones that get you.
Yeah, the microphones, there are a lot of, we need to fix that somehow. So, I finally got told to stay in place. The squealing was happening. But it's really fun, and I think it really captures, I love it. I think it really captures the spirit of what we try to do with Convocation, which is, let's celebrate, we're all here, we're starting out the year. Let's start with something fun and energetic. And the kids give them, for those of you who haven't been there, and I think you've heard this before, the kids give the main message of what we're trying to do for you.
All right, so we're gonna move on to 8B, which is the SATEC food service equipment purchase. And the administration is recommending a motion to award the SATEC food service equipment purchase to the Singer Kittredge Company in the amount of $53,134.42. So I will make that motion. Is there someone that could second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jack. And then Martha, do you?
Sure. So we put out a request for bids for the cost of two 40-gallon natural gas-fired stationary kettles. The ones that are at the town school currently are well beyond their useful life, and they are also the type that these right here have the capability of tilting down so you can dump out the contents of these kettles. The current ones are stationary and they don't move, and so we have to bail out the stuff out of the kettles, and when they go to clean it, they have to stand on a stool to be able to reach down into the kettle. So this is just a big improvement in two pieces of equipment that is needed at the town school. And this comes from the Child Nutrition Program funds. It's not part of the local voted budget funds.
Anyone have any questions? Comments? All right, then I'm going to call for the vote on this one, that the bid is awarded to the Singer Kittredge in the amount of $53,134.42. Nilda?
Yes.
Charlie? Did you say yes? Charlie?
Yes, you said yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Carly?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes?
Susan says yes, and Suzanne?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
The next item is the FY 25 budget timeline. I'm going to let you speak to that.
I'm going to start, and then I'm going to ask Bree and Martha to help with this.
Okay.
I just want to, some of the board members here may recall because we had this conversation a few years ago, but Bree is stepping up a lot in our work, and this year she'll be running the budget pieces.
Okay.
So I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that, and Martha and I are supporting her with that. So we did this last year about this time. we really look at the next meeting. I gave you some of my report, superintendent's report email about some foreshadowing as we're trying to get on top of how the change in state funding is going to affect Maple Run. And so I think one of the things we should do at the next meeting, I was thinking about this, especially after our conversation last night with David, that it might be good to do a little bit of budget tax rates 101 for everyone next meeting. And Martha and I were talking about it, and Bree, we thought it would be really good to say, you know, what, all those acronyms that go with it, and then how do you get from a budget to a tax rate in Vermont? Because it's not, as many people like to, I hear many state officials say, there's usually about 110 or 150 people in the state of Vermont that really understand it. It's usually the superintendent and the business manager, because we're the ones that have to, I look at Martha and she does it all, so I want to, let's make it real here. I look at Bree and Martha and they do it all, so they don't have to do it, although we had some nice discussions today about it. So we'd like to make that a big part. It's almost an educational part within the meeting, and that might be some of the report.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really important.
I think it's really important, and what we saw, you and I saw at the chair board training this past spring, there's some big issues that are coming up that we really need everyone to kind of understand. And have, let people have some time to think about it, because as you see on this timeline, when we get to the first meeting in November, we're going to talk about the core budget assumptions to give you an idea of where we think the budget's forecasting to go, and especially since we're under, our contracts are settled for the FY25 year, we can really do that. But knowing the impacts, before I go and ask all the colleagues that are here tonight to go sharpen their pencils and create budgets, I'd like to give them a direction of where we're going from the board, so they're not having to do 2, 3, 4 times redoing budgets. So we can do some modeling and some forecasting for you to really do that. So I think if we did the training next board meeting, and then the board meeting following that, let's start talking about what are we thinking for targets and what does that mean for tax rates.
Okay.
Does that sound like, and then the rest of that we get into our usual December and January, where the board's looking at budget every meeting.
And I think too, like, especially after what you talked to me about how was going to the weighted student information was changing. Like, the more heads up we have on that, the more, the better it's going to be in terms of, us having a good understanding what that's going to mean, not something getting it out to the community.
Yeah, I think this is where the first goal of the board, that community forum, is really, really important. That you have this information, because you may say, well, we can kind of give you a target, but we want to check in with our community members too. And know what, if you said X percentage, and you said what's 1% less, and what does that mean for budget dollars? And part of that setup for that budget was last meeting's report that John gave you on grants, and what we know we have and what's going away, and we'll get that sharpened as well.
Okay.
I think he covered it.
I think so too.
Sorry.
Great job.
I just keep going.
All right, no, that's.
I'm trying to talk less and I didn't do it.
Any questions about that information? Questions? All right, we're going to move on to warrants then. So the administration recommends a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board members participating remotely. So I'll make that motion if someone would second it.
Second.
Thank you. So we're going to take a vote on that. Nilda? Charlie?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Susan is a yes, and Suzanne?
Yes.
All right, so that passes as well. All right, next item, superintendent report.
Good. A couple of things here. I know we are working on getting the board and to a greater community, a central office leadership organizational summary / chart. It's not really a chart like you're used to seeing org charts. One of the things that I thought of and talked with my colleagues on the leadership team is really trying to introduce the board. We all kind of know what people do, we have an idea, but what's it really that folks do? And you met it, for some of you tonight, it's first time meeting Alexis. So really kind of understand the work. I really strive to have central office be a support mechanism to the schools, and take regulation. I was saying this to David last night. My goal is for central office to take regulation requirements off the work having to be done at the school level. That doesn't, I'm not naive, we still have some things we have to have them do that we can't do here at central office, but if there's a way we can centralize that work. I haven't gotten a count of them. I was actually out exercising today and I was like, I wish I knew the number of assurances that I sign off as a superintendent for the school district that we're following law and regulation, and it's a lot. Jack, you may remember that from when you retired, Jack. It's at least doubled, if not tripled. And a lot of it's the federal management. I was saying to this to David last night. A lot of it's the federal mandates on ensuring the operations and management, or you might have heard of OMB, Office Management and Budget, from the federal level, of all the analyzing they do for making sure dollars go to the right place and that we follow the right laws. So we really try to do that here because I want the folks in the building focusing on the kids. Everybody, anyone else that's in the building. So I was going to have that chart. Did you put that chart in? No. So we'll get you that chart, and we'll talk more about that next time. But we're really trying to do that, and I'd like to have each of the directors come and do a little bit of what they do, and have, just so you know kind of what the work they are. You know, we all know that Stephanie Ripley is the pre-K director. What's that mean? What does Stephanie do? You know, you hear John, so you've had enough from John. Me. And John, you know, so I think it's hearing, and even from Martha a little bit, you hear her talk about budgets and you see that, but kind of what's that mean and what does it mean for Brianne and her work, or Becky and her work. So, and I would include Andrea and Alexis in that as well. So, you and I can talk about that, Susan, and how we plan that out. I think that would be really good. I'd like to announce tonight, I've been getting a lot of community pressure about April 8th. Does anyone know what's happening on April 8th? We're having solar eclipse. And we will have the longest totality of darkness of the whole eclipse path, because the path is somewhere between here, the center of the path is somewhere between St. Albans and Georgia, if you look at it. If you've heard the city, they're really planning for it. There's going to be a lot of festivities that are going on that's being planned. Sign those. Sorry. That's all right. No, I'm glad you asked, Jack. And so we are going to release early that day. We are going to stay in school. And we're going to give, it's not that it's really, actually really cheap, and I think it's a really way to ensure, because kids will want to hook up. 75 cents a piece. We're going to give every kid and every adult a pair of certified glasses, because you can get knockoff ones, and don't buy ones through Amazon because they aren't. Aaron spent a couple hours making sure like they made the NASA specs on the glasses. So we're going to use it as an educational event as we would naturally. I know all our teachers would do that. Love it. The former science teacher in me is really excited, as you can see, about the solar eclipse. But we're going to get out early. I don't have the release times, but one of the things we're doing, one of the things that's been in some of the local conversations is you're not going to be able to travel around. So one of the things I did is there was an after action event from the 2017 eclipse of what happens to traffic patterns in rural areas. And it's very clear that about an hour before the eclipse, the traffic starts to back up. And I say this for all of you personally, 3 to 4 hours after the event, it will still be clogged. It's because what happens is people pull over and stop where they're at, and especially around interstate on-ramps or off-ramps. So Collins Purley intersection up there will be a mess. And this is shown in the patterns from 2017. I was looking at it. You can look at it all online. You can spend a 4-hour YouTube if you want to do it. I did not. But they have a nice analysis, and what their suggestions are is be off the roads an hour before. So we're planning on buses back to wherever they park, an hour to an hour and a half, probably an hour and a half and we're probably gonna put some more time in that just to make sure people are getting back. And we're gonna do a lot of announcements about this because it's gonna be an off day, it's a Monday, to people know like, hey, your kids are coming home early, so.
So say start that news now.
Yeah, we're gonna start that news and we're often and many times, but the principals and I actually talked about it yesterday and we all agreed, let's not quite set the time yet. We'll do it with plenty of advance notice, but we wanna make sure we have all our timings down. We'll talk to this company about it as well. Hopefully, most of you, we are. Today, there was a test notification from the alert system. I think everyone got that on their cell phones. On Monday, that's why I looked at you that I remember. No, I didn't say today about, there was one today, and that was.
It was not ours.
For you. That was everybody's cell phones.
Everybody was.
Oh, the FEMA.
The FEMA
one, yes.
So last year we did this and we found it actually very helpful. That was a good reminder for some of our parents. We will be testing our mass notification system on Monday. Erin's going to be putting out a whole bunch of Facebook, social media, go out through our rapid email system saying, hey, we're doing this. If you hear of anybody that said, I didn't get that, say, you need to call the school and make sure your contact information, because literally there's no one doing it. This is all in the database system, and the database is tied to PowerSchool that sends out the mass notifications. So we're trying to get that out everywhere, as this is our test. If someone doesn't get it, please let us know. And let the school know, don't call here. The schools will do that faster. I think that's what I have today. I sent you, hopefully I'm still taking feedback, comments, suggestions outside the meeting of my writing that I'm doing to you every 2 weeks. I hope that's helping. We talked about being more is better. Oh yeah. And then, can you tell us a little bit about our food service issue we have going?
So every 3 years, there is what they call an administrative review of any one of the child nutrition programs. We have a child nutrition breakfast program, the lunch program, we have a supper program, we have a fresh fruits and vegetable program, we have a summer foods program. So all of those are all separate child nutrition programs, and every one of them on a 3-year cycle does an automatic review. This past year, we had a review on our breakfast and lunch program, and for the most part, everything went smoothly, except that we had, and this was done in FY23, so it was last year's, and it was, what they do is they notify you that they are going to come and review a prior month's services, which is fine. They picked September, which is the very first month of the school year. And so this would have been September of 22. We were just barely bringing kids back into the buildings. And we had a couple of our schools that were doing breakfast in the classroom, which means that the breakfasts were brought to the classrooms and served to the children in the classrooms. Child nutrition program is a complete stickler on proper paperwork, and so every single classroom there is a checklist sheet that they need to check off when the child is given a meal, and they are very specific on how you check off that sheet. It has to be a tick mark through each number. You can't draw a line through the number of kids that you served. So we gave them our month's worth of paperwork because they wanted to see every document. So we have, I don't know how many classrooms we have, and every teacher had to fill one of those out every day. And so they had 30 days worth for each one of our classrooms. So they had like 1,200 sheets of documents they went through. So they discounted us on any one that didn't have it properly documented. If they didn't circle the right number, or if they didn't tick it off absolutely perfectly. And so in the end, we had to do what we call a corrective action plan, which says we're going to go back and we're going to retrain all the staff, we're going to get this all set up. And when we looked at the documents, the first ones of the month, the first couple of weeks, when the students are first here, the teachers are just getting things under their feet, is when most of the errors happened. And by the end of the month, they were all pretty much, for the most part, more accurate. So in the end, because those forms weren't done properly, we are going to have a finding on our audit, and it's a fiscal action, which means that they're going to withhold some funds. So out of the funds that we generate each year for the child nutrition program, which I'm gonna guess is probably about $1 million, they're gonna withhold about $5,800 out of our next payment. But it will show up in our audit, our annual audit. So we just wanted to give you a heads up that this is happening because we haven't had a finding in quite a few years, and it was kind of exciting for me. But it is one of those things, it's a learning opportunity, and so we've done the training, and the proper paperwork is being done now. So just wanted to give you a heads up.
And we aren't doing breakfast in that.
And we are not doing breakfast in the classroom.
Yes, no,
At
that. I'm like, good to
at
worry
that
about
building
that.
anymore. Yeah,
Yeah, so,
it was very chaotic, and the paperwork is ridiculous.
Bertha and I talked about it, and we wanted to make sure the board knew, you won't see the audit result. The auditors are actually here this week, but you won't see their report probably till February. But we always think it's better for you to know sooner than later, before you get to see an audit report, because you'll get a transmittal letter saying there was a finding this year, which Bree and Martha and their crew do a great job, and we usually never have those, so as you say,
Right.
it's an upsetting piece.
And the quality of food?
The quality of the food.
I was just
quality of
mistaken.
the food.
It's probably what people measure. The form wasn't right.
Right.
Kids love the food, you know.
Kids all ate, they all got meals,
They got
they all were fed, it's just the form wasn't filled out properly.
Bureaucracy at its best.
Yes, and this is one of the AOE programs that I find is the most stringent in their requirements, and it's a lot, but it's worth it.
Well, there's probably a reason, but, you know, people like
Yeah.
me like to joke about stuff like that. 'Cause some of the things we worry about.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Alrighty, so board announcements. Anyone? So I have some board announcements. So the very first thing is, I meant to apologize. I want to apologize to you because I meant to introduce you to everyone when you first came in, but this David Bray, he's our newest board member. So,
Welcome.
and then also Dee Christie. She just was selected as like teacher of the year by the, I think it's the big art group in the state of Vermont.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the third thing is, I'm on the board in Fairfield for the library. I don't know how that happened, but so this past.
Are you banning books right now?
Yes, all of them. Of course not. It's Fairfield. So it was interesting. Somehow the board, the library got like 500 pairs of those solar glasses.
Yeah, oh yeah, people are buying them.
People
all
are
the-
buying them.
If you want them, you want to get them now.
But what was really interesting was when the librarian, Sarah Allerton, was giving her report, she said that Doug Bell, who works through the technical center, has been going up there on Tuesdays. Well, he went up there, so there was a child in the school that came to the library after school, like bugging Sarah about doing an after-school program on circuits. Yeah, which is really cool. And so finally she was able to get in touch with Doug. He went up there and gave this student a lesson, like just an individual lesson. And then I think if my understanding was right, he and someone else, maybe from the tech center, were gonna do like an after-school program on circuits. Like it was gonna be like a 3-week after-school program on circuits. Sarah wasn't really sure how that was being funded. She said, it might be out of the goodness of his heart. It could be out of, you know, a grant-funded position, but I just thought it was a really cool connection that they'd done. Anyways.
And I did not get a chance to ask the answer.
Well, I sent her an email, but
Yeah.
anyways, I thought it was really cool.
So, just a personal note, my youngest grandchild from New Hampshire has cystic fibrosis. If you met her, you never know it. She's a little bumptious little girl and runs all around and does all the things. And, as a goalie, and soccer and all that, but the Make-A-Wish Foundation is taking their whole family, their 2 older brothers, and then my son and his wife, to Disneyland. What's in Florida?
Disney World.
Disney World, and all expenses paid, and that's happening this next weekend, so we're excited about that, but some people do some nice things for the kids.
That's great.
Anyone else?
I have one little tiny thing. Well, it's not that tiny. I went to the Fairfield City Town Cross Country Race today at MDU.
Yeah.
It was for the grades 5 through 8. And it was amazing to see the kids cheering for the other schools instead of just their team.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love cross country meets.
Yeah.
They're nice.
There's a bunch, they're going through all through next month too, right? I'll be at a couple of.
A girl from CTEC just blazed the whole thing by a big margin. So
Mike will be glad to hear that.
it's nice.
City schools and stuff too. I called her track and she corrected me.
Anyone on Zoom, any announcements? Alrighty. Agenda for future meetings, we have a couple. We're gonna talk about the governance standards next session. We're also gonna come up with we're gonna also talk about the plan for meeting board goals
Yeah.
next. Anything else?
We said we'd do a little budget 101.
Yeah. All right, since we don't have an executive session today, the meeting is adjourned at 7:37 p.m.
How did you go along to watch the film?